What is going on, Busy Bariatrics? I'm Rob, your favorite VSG man turned bariatric coach, here to help you stop white-knuckling your way through chicken, broccoli, and diet-air meal plans, ditch the burn boot classes that leave you sweaty but still stuck, and finally fix the habits, patterns, behaviors that got you here in the first place. Today's episode is probably going to hit a nerve for some of you, because we're talking about the one thing nobody wants to admit after surgery. Your stomach changed, but your brain brought all the baggage to the party. You can have bariatric surgery, you can be on a GLP-1, you can have the perfect meal plan and macros plan. But if your mindset still defaults to self-sabotage, emotional eating, all or nothing thinking, guilt, shame, and I'll start Monday behavior, you're going to keep finding yourself back in the same cycle wearing smaller pants and bigger frustration. And today's guest knows exactly what that feels like. Shelly Southall from Weight Loss Surgery Delight has spent years helping bariatric patients stop obsessing over perfection and start building a life that actually supports long-term success. Her whole mission revolves around mindset, habits, environment, and community, which is exactly why I'm excited to have her as a summer camp speaker this year. In this episode, we're diving into why regain is usually behavioral as opposed to biological, the mindset traps bariatric patients fall into after surgery, how shame quickly and quietly keeps people stuck, why your environment matters more than motivation, and practical strategies to stop letting your emotions run your nutrition like a drunk toddler holding the steering wheel. And honestly, this conversation lines up perfectly with summer camp, because if you don't fix the mindset side of the journey, you'll constantly restart the same fat loss phase over and over again, wearing different leggings and pretending this time is different. So, screenshot this episode, throw it on your stories, tag me and Shelly, and share this with somebody who needs to hear this, because they are not broken. They just need better system support and strategy. All right, let's get busy. Shelly, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rob. I am really excited to be here.
I have to tell you, I always feel like I know everyone in the bariatric community, and then like some people pop into our feeds. And one of the coolest parts was Stacy, my virtual assistant, was like, I saw a webinar for this awesome person. I kind of want to see what she's all about. All of your messaging was like this clear identity that she resonated with. And then I was like, well, tell her that, like, you know, what we do and that you'd like to attend the workshop. And she was just smitten with you. And after getting to talk with you and meet so much about you, I'm so excited to have you on. So for people who may not know you, can you just give us like who you are and what led you to create WLS Delight?
Yeah, I'd be happy to share that. And it all started over 24 years ago because I am...
Which is phenomenal.
What's that?
Oh, I just said that is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I am 24 years post-op gastric bypass. And I had a little bit of a rocky journey in the beginning. I lost over 100 pounds in just 6 months. And before I was even a full year post-op, I was already starting to struggle with a little bit of regain. Believe me, I was one of those women who I said, that is never going to happen to me. I have worked too long and too hard to let this happen. But there I was. And when you find yourself in that place, you're very embarrassed. You're afraid to ask for help from the very people that would help you the most. And so I did what so many of us, I think, do. And that was I reverted back to the old diet mentality, not stopping to think, gee, it didn't work before surgery. Maybe it won't work so hot after surgery anyway. But like I said, it was just a little bit of regain at first. But because I got back into the diet mentality, I think I made it worse and worse over time. So fast forward to 15 years later, and there I was carrying around over 50 pounds of regain. Not sure the exact number because I was avoiding the scale like the plague, but I know it was over 50 pounds. And it wasn't until 2017 that I finally cracked the code and I lost all of the regain, every single pound. But it was so interesting because that was such a catalyst for me. That transformation led to me becoming a bariatric lifestyle strategist and to creating the Right Size Lifestyle Academy, where I teach women how to build the mindset, habits, and environment to support success after bariatric surgery. And a lot of the people, I attract a lot of the people that have had messy journeys like I have, where there's some regain involved in the story, although some people come to protect that. And it has been such a beautiful journey, and it's taken me down paths that I totally didn't expect. In fact, one of my biggest passion, and this, it's part of mindset, but one of my biggest passions has become discipline, because even after I cracked the code in 2017 and figured things out, I still told myself the story I had told myself my entire life, that I'm not disciplined. I was carrying around this false identity. I'm not disciplined. And it wasn't until I had an epiphany where I realized I actually am disciplined. I just have totally misunderstood what discipline is my entire life.
I think so much in bariatric and especially the fitness and nutrition space, discipline gets thrown around like a blanket for everything of either you need to be disciplined or you're not disciplined enough, or if you had discipline, you could do this. And I'm excited that you're going to talk about this in summer camp. By your definition or terms or frameworks, what should we as bariatric patients be thinking of when we think of the word discipline?
Well, I think probably the easiest place to start on this, because this is a question this is a really important question. And I think so many of us are taught that discipline is deprivation. Suffer now so you can live later. Give up everything that sounds good and just muscle your way through the day with sheer willpower. And, I think we can fall into this very easily after bariatric surgery, because we place enormous pressure on ourselves. And I think because of that, we take a lot of the guidelines we're given and we internalize them and we turn them into this all or nothing. And I think it's very easy to get back into that form of hardcore all or nothing discipline after surgery. But where the challenge came in for me and for many of the people I work with is, that first year for a lot of us is absolutely amazing, because, oh my gosh, we're discovering our new body, how it works. We discover, am I going to get full with 3 bites or 5 bites? And we're shedding weight and we're able to move our bodies again in these wonderful ways. So we're out at new adventures, and everything is bariatric focus. But then the further we get out from surgery, real life starts to happen. And Rob, as you know, real life gets really messy. I mean, things start happening, like maybe there's a big project at work and you have to work late every night. Maybe your kids are having some trouble, or maybe you're having a relationship crisis. Maybe you're taking care of an elderly parent. And all of these things dilute our focus, so that our commitment to the bariatric journey, that hardcore all or nothing, it becomes more and more strained, until a lot of times many of us just end up breaking. And what is really sad is we always blame ourselves. I knew I wasn't disciplined. I knew I couldn't do this, rather than questioning the approach. And so I think that's an important place to start, what discipline isn't. So it's not deprivation, it's not rigid restriction, and it is certainly not punishment. I believe that discipline, real discipline, is actually permission. It's permission to create change in your life at a slow and steady pace that you can actually sustain. It's permission to actually stumble on your bariatric journey without leading to that spiraling totally out of control. And it's permission to, wait for it, it is permission to actually enjoy your bariatric life while you're building it. And when we shift that perspective to where discipline is actually coming from a place of permission, it's amazing what happens, because we start working with ourselves instead of fighting ourselves. And it just shifts the entire relationship with your journey to one where that old way of discipline was chaos, and this new way actually creates calm and consistency.
I love all that you said with that. And the coolest part too is like your definition and framework of discipline matches so perfectly with our financial coach, Josh Wiener, who's going to be coming like 2 weeks after you in summer camp. He always talks about having a budget is giving you like that discipline around your budget gives you freedom to spend. And I think so many times if we just reframe the mindset of, like showing some discernment is what he always says in the moment allows us to truly spend and have freedom in other aspects of our life. So I'm always like really excited when we see like what happens in our bariatric journeys spills into our lifestyle from mindset coaching, but also from like a financial standpoint. And then I also want to go back because like another part that you said that always grinds my gears is this idea like we should be like punishing or flagellating ourselves for not being disciplined. I'm not going to humor it with who I saw or give them their name, but you'll see TikTok challenges where it's like you need to do like burpees or wall sits if you have a calorie drink. And I just think when you start associating like punishment with behaviors around food and nutrition, you're doing more harm than good. Can you just tell us why that's probably not the best approach or what we could do instead to kind of rephrase that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the tie-in to the financial too.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing to hit on before I get into that is taking a financial aspect of this too. When we start to view discipline in a different way, that it's something to lift us up, not something to punish us or to shame us. It's got some financial elements to it. I kind of liken it to compounding interest on an investment account, because you can make small little changes that continue to pay off and grow and help you flourish. So I love that you're bringing in the financial element. And it's so true that so many of the things that we learn from a mindset and behavior perspective, they bleed into other areas of our life. These same principles that work in areas of health also work in areas of finance, also work in areas of relationships. So I love what you said about that. But yeah, when we approach it as, oh my gosh, we need to punish ourselves because we did something wrong. Well, first of all, I don't like that entire concept of right and wrong. We make choices. We make decisions every day, multiple decisions, and not all of them are going to be perfect. And when we punish ourselves, we're immediately defining these behaviors as bad. And when we do that, there's a transference. I did a bad thing, therefore I must be bad. And that gets us into the whole shame and guilt cycle. And it's shame and guilt, I think, is the most dangerous place we can live in this entire journey. Because, and that's why dieting didn't work, is because of the shame and guilt tied to it. Because the diet mentality doesn't just fail. And similar to how you're saying this punishment mentality, you did a bad thing, punish yourself. These things don't just fail. They train self-sabotage. They keep that cycle of self-sabotage alive. And so we just get sucked further and further and further down the rabbit hole. The way we get out of it is by building trust with ourselves. And that happens one kept promise at a time.
Yeah, I think it's just all really like a perfect way. And like when we get to this like good or bad language, I think it builds this level of association that happens. And like when that cycle of self-sabotage starts, it's sometimes really tough to get out of. But if someone's like sitting in a cycle of self-sabotage, what's a simple way, like, so to say, like, snap out of it, I always say is like, that's horrible coaching and advice, because I don't think anyone actively says like, I'm going to self-sabotage. And then if your coach says like, all right, well, stop doing that, it's like, well, yeah, I don't think I would have done it in the first place if I knew how not to. How can we identify self-sabotage, and what can we do to kind of either like pump the brakes a little bit or just have us pause some more?
Well, I think the way we identify self-sabotage is when we have the awareness to recognize the patterns. Because we do. We repeat the same patterns over and over again. But I would say whether you actually recognize the pattern or not, the path to lift yourself up out of self-sabotage, it is actually far simpler than I think a lot of us make it. The path to recovering from that is to make one promise to yourself. And when I say make a promise to yourself, I am talking about something, it must be doable. So let's say if someone wanted to make a commitment to themselves to exercise every day, and we don't want to start off with, I'm going to run 5 miles a day. No, we may not even want to start off with, I'm going to walk 30 minutes a day. Sometimes the simpler we make the promise, the easier it is to keep, the better off we're going to be. So if you just make one promise to yourself, to something as simple as, I'm going to walk 5 minutes a day, just the ability to keep that promise once and then do it again and do it again, it shifts something in us. Because when it happened to me, it almost surprised me when I actually started keeping my first promise back in 2017. Something in you just shifts to where it almost shakes your identity off your core, especially if you see yourself as undisciplined or someone who deserves to be punished. When you start sticking to a promise, you start trusting yourself, you start gaining confidence, and you shift away from trying to need some sort of motivation to instead relying on momentum, because these are two very different things. A lot of times that person looking for that first thing to get themselves out of that place that they're stuck, they're looking for motivation, right? Motivation is a fleeting thing. We got to start the momentum and just doing that one small promise, and that make a commitment, keep that promise. That will start reversing that spiral. You're going to be taking it up instead of being sucked down further.
I love it so much because Ryan Cassim, who's also speaking this summer, talks about almost exactly with a couple different vocab words differently of this idea of we have to make these integrity deposits, these ideas, just what you said, of one small promise, of the idea of I'm never having carbs ever again. And it's first off, that's unrealistic. And just like you said, we need something doable. So it could be something as simple as okay, if we keep going over our macros, our calorie count for the day, saying okay, we're going to hit it perfectly for the next 6 months is probably impossible. Even for some of the best bodybuilders, they can't do that. But the idea of okay, if we're going over 200 calories and just saying, you know what, I'm committing that I'm only going over 150 calories, and we work on that for a month and start to build that investment of I'm more mindful and identifying of okay, now that I'm more mindful of my calories and I've shown that I can do 150 calories, maybe after a month or two, we get it down to 100. And I think that's why so many people come to us in this mindset of okay, why aren't you fixing me and getting me my goal weight in 30 days? And it's just so unrealistic. But if we want to make lasting change, it's a lot of the mindset framework that you talk about. And it's the idea of we need something doable and something that we can build momentum on almost immediately.
Absolutely. And one of the core concepts I teach, and I'll be sharing a lot more about this at your summer camp as well, it's something I call radical restraint. And when I first started using radical restraint, it didn't have a name. It was just, it was kind of what I described, where I started doing something different, and it really changed my entire trajectory. And radical restraint is only focusing on one change at a time. And sometimes it's breaking that one change down into 10 changes. For instance, if the thing someone's trying to change is, oh gosh, I'm having a challenge with late night snacking. Well, if you're snacking up till midnight, let's just try stopping at 11. Let's not try killing it right after dinner at 6 o'clock.
Above that, yeah.
Yeah, so we can micro target in ways like that. But if we just change, it's hard to shift to approaching things from radical restraint, one thing at a time. But it changes the entire playing field on this journey in ways that are even hard to describe. And it's funny because this is the thing that I find the women I work with have the hardest time saying, wait, only one? Oh, come on. Can't I do 3 or 4 things? And I encourage, I'm like, well, maybe you can maybe get away with 2 things if one of the things you're doing is just something you do once a week. There's exceptions. We live in a world where it's all about instant gratification. So we want to be what I call red carpet ready overnight. And so we want to drop the 30 pounds overnight, but that's not gonna last. That's not gonna change our lifestyle or get us the lasting results.
I think it's so important with that because even when we started, because busy in our term is the whole busy method. So it's building habits, understanding nutrition, staying active, showing up for yourself. And you're like, okay, he spelled it. What's the last part? We put an exclamation point for healthy sources of dopamine. When I originally started coaching, I would give an actionable item every week of those 5. And I think like you do better once you know better. It was almost overwhelming to so many people that it really becomes now, both myself, Lisa, and Kylie, it's like we focus on maybe 1, possibly 2 things that we are going to razor sharp. And in the same logic of yours of like, okay, if we want to get better on our balance on the weekends. It's okay. Well, we still have like 5 days to work on that. We want you to start looking at your calendar and planning ahead. Do you have the groceries that possibly work in? Are we scheduling our workouts within it? Like it's all this framework around that part of these small little baby steps. So then when you're really focusing on the weekend, it's get it right. But it's also like, okay, you've gotten 1 weekend. Let's see if we can do 2 out of the month and do that. And then the next month being 3 out of the month. And then it starts of like maybe 2 months in a row of that behavior. So it's always just fun to see like how much like philosophies flow and vibe and kind of go with everything because it does help keep everyone manageable and sustainable for everything.
Yeah, and it sounds like you have really created a beautiful approach with that busy framework.
Yeah, it's it's the same of like I think the more that you work with clients and you realize like I'm a special ed teacher by day. So I always look at it like if the client doesn't really hit the target, I really look more of like okay, how do we chunk it down to be more achievable and then we kind of break backwards from that.
Yeah.
And that really does I think help with it, but so much of what we do is helping our clients feel like they've gained control back over their lives. And I'm just curious, like, when it comes to food, so many clients feel like they are out of control around food. What are some ways that we can work on our mindset or reshape our relationship with food so that we feel like we're more in the driver's seat?
This is such a good one. And there's different ways to answer this. So I will answer it more from an emotional perspective because I know a lot of people struggle with emotional eating. And one thing to do is just remember these words: regulate before reason. Because a lot of times I think when we're struggling with food, whether it's true cravings or emotional cravings, we try to logic our way out of it. Like we can have this discussion about it and be smart about it because we know what we should be doing. But that's not the part of our brain that is activated in that moment. You are not going to logic your way out of it. So a lot of times, just a small shift in a small shift where we want to move away from that part of our brain that's trying to logic us through it to a different part of our brain. It's almost like we're creating a little pause between the urge and that actual decision. Do I put that in my mouth or do I walk on by it? And there's a couple ways we can approach that. But the first thing I usually like to invite people to do is when first of all, emotions, we think that they happen up here, but emotions are chemical reactions. So if you notice that you're stressed out and you really want that slice of cake, pay attention to your body because you'll start noticing that it's not just all up here. Your heart might be beating fast. You might be breathing heavier. You might almost feel like you've got blood just zipping through your veins. You have that feeling you sometimes get with anxiety. And if you shift it to acknowledging what the emotion is that you're feeling and how it's physically showing up in your body, you've just redirected your brain to a different area where you can pause. And now you can get to a place where you can make a choice. You may still choose to have it. And the thing is, that's okay. As long as you condition yourself to start creating some sort of pause between the urge to eat that food and the actual act of eating it. And if you want to steer completely away from that emotional side to identifying what you're feeling, you can do something as simple as just straightening, sit up straight, change your posture, or take 5 steps into another room. Something as simple as that is really a nervous system reset. So that puts you in a whole different place where you've put a pause on it. And now you can decide when your brain's in a little bit of a different state. And it didn't take much to do it. It doesn't take long to sit up straight or walk 5 steps. So it can be something as simple as that.
I love that you gave such simple and actionable ways to solve this, because I think the problem we see on the internet is everyone will give you here's a 50-day detox tea, or if we put a vibration plate on our back and we light 18 candles and point to true north on our backs and do breath work, that'll solve it. And not to say that I'm sure some people like that if that's your jam, but for me, I think it's let's put some simple friction between our emotional eating and the behavior. And it's something as simple as pausing. We always say pausing and plating sometimes can be the helpful mind. We're just going to put it and then track it into our calendars or chronometer for our nutrition. Or something as simple as I know when I record podcast episodes like this, my adrenaline gets up because I'm excited to talk. I like the collaboration. And I realize when I come up, I can emotionally eat from being overstimulated. And something as simple as when we get done this episode, I'll lock myself into the bedroom and set a 15-minute timer and just lay on my bed and just kind of bring myself down. And I'm not saying I don't want to give an image of The Shining where I'm busting my head through the door. But I think for a lot of it, it's identifying this is a habit pattern that I have seen from getting finished recording with awesome people like you. But then it's also okay, how do I reframe what I'm doing? And the behavior was, for me, I'm anxiously or emotionally eating. Something as simple as I'm going to wait 15 minutes and see it. And that's really been fine-tuned from recording enough to be it might be that I plan an Uncrustable for after I record. And that is a perfect balance of 300 calories with a little bit of protein, a little bit of carb and fat that kind of works it. But kind of finding a way to identify it, put a different behavior pattern in place and move can really be as simple as take a time out and have a snack.
Yeah, exactly. And what's beautiful about that is, I can tell that you're working with that habit loop and you're modifying it to make it work with the situation.
Yeah. And sometimes you don't have to get it right the first time. You just have to keep tinkering at it. And it's we talk about a lot of okay, first step, you've identified it. And I don't think enough people give themselves credit for identifying how they self-sabotage. And then the second step is well, what actionable step can we start to take and then kind of build on that? But giving the clients the autonomy to really work through that process and figure out where they're really struggling developing can play a really big role. But what I see with a lot of people in the bariatric community, they don't necessarily trust themselves to do the work of it. How can people rebuild trust with themselves after years of broken promises with maybe failed diet attempts, or even something as simple as I'm regaining and thinking oh my goodness, this is a failure? What are some ways we can kind of rebuild trust with ourselves to kind of get out of it?
Well, I think the first thing goes back to what I shared earlier. It's making one small commitment and keeping it. I find that is the greatest thing we can do to build trust in ourselves. And sometimes I find it's a lot easier to make that promise have absolutely nothing to do with what you're putting in your mouth or how you're moving your body. Because I know for a lot of us that can trigger certain pressures in us because we're well, I always fail at that. So we go into that false identity that we've built for ourselves. So a lot of times I share with people, start with something that has nothing to do with what you put in your mouth or how you're moving your body. Start instead with, how about you just show up? So like if I was talking to someone who is in your program, I would say, your only job to start building trust in yourself is to just show up. I'm not sure how often your sessions are, but I would just say, show up at the session every week. That's your only job. If you do that, you start building trust in yourself. I find also another element of building trust in yourself is taking the time to celebrate everything you do right. So that person that, okay, I've been showing up every week. Are you celebrating every week? Are you celebrating every week that you showed up? Even if it's just a mental high five. I have woohoo parties in my head all day long, Rob, because I'm all about celebrating. I have some people I work with, it's really hard for them to celebrate because they're like, that's kind of rah-rah. I can't do that. That's not me. It doesn't have to be rah-rah. Just mentally give yourself a high five or say, way to go. Wink at yourself in the mirror. Give yourself a thumbs up, whatever it is. It may sound cheesy, but every time you celebrate something you do right, you are rewiring your brain. You are rewiring your brain to do more of the things that you want to be doing. And things as simple as that may sound ridiculous are so incredibly powerful.
And yeah, I love everything you've said, because I think a lot of the times, we have our community call Tuesdays at 8, and that's when summer camp you're going to be speaking is. It's a Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern. And we start with like celebrating wins. And it's like something where I even just reframing, because when new bees kind of come into the hive, they'll be like, I have a small win. And I'm like, no, a win is a win. And as long as like you haven't done it the week before, or you're celebrating the fact like I've gone 2 weeks of continuing that habit, a win is a win. And I think so many times like people think that could be woo-woo, but it's like you have to build that momentum somewhere. And the more that like you see other people in a community that are working on things and growing and developing, I think it plays like a really big part in making sure that everyone feels like they're successful and doing well.
Absolutely. And I'd love to add something on that too, because I can't tell you how often I ask someone, so what's a win that you created today or this week? And they tell me, nothing. I haven't done anything. And every time, if I start asking enough questions, I guarantee you it's there. But there's another thing that I find so many people do is they start to share what their win is, and they always put a but after it.
The big
yeah, I walked, but I didn't go as far as I want to. So it's like they're trying to knock themselves down a peg. And I don't know if it's because we were maybe brought up, don't be boastful or whatever it is. But for some reason, so many of us have a hard time. Just accept the win and take it and run and build with it.
Yeah, I think talking about getting rid of big butts is always important, because I think a lot of the times it takes away from the value. It kind of like tries to negate what they have already done. And my whole goal is like the more that they just, clients and bariatric patients understand you need to move forward. You just need to continue to like building momentum. You do well. Like so many times a newbie will come into the hive and they'll be like, I see people like running marathons or on their bench or hitting their new reps. And it's like, yes. And when they started with hitting a step goal, hitting a water goal, like prioritizing protein, not even hitting like their protein goal, but prioritizing protein, or just like reading a nutrition label. And I think like that's always so important, especially when you're joining a community and working with people. You can't really compare your day one to some of our clients now are on day 1,000 with us, because they realize in our alumni program, you still stay in the community, but it's like you don't necessarily need me, but you understand like I want to keep my nutrition prioritized. I want to have workouts scheduled for me. I want to have a community call where we're bringing in awesome experts like you to kind of help share all that. And that's really the development. And I'm excited to have you come in. And you're going to be speaking at summer camp. What is your session going to be on? And what do you hope the campers get out of it?
Well, I've already shared with you today that discipline is a huge passion of mine. So I'm going to share a whole lot more about discipline. We are going to roll up our sleeves and we are going to take a very deep dive. I've come up with something that I call the 7 new rules of discipline. And it basically takes everything we thought we knew about discipline and turns it upside down. And I'm really, really excited to share that with everyone. And we've got some really cool takeaways, like a little cutout they can have where they've got those 7 rules as little reminders that they can use in their day to day.
Yeah, I'm just so excited for everything that you shared. Looking at what we have in the workbook for your session, you really are my people in the sense of like, it looks like we are going to be doing work. And I always say, like, look, it's always good to have a little bit of a celebration or a hype part of the video. But then it's like, okay, now that we have this information, how are we implementing it? How are we trying to build it on? And I really think your session is going to like be amazing and really do that. Besides summer camp, if someone's like, man, Shelly just gets it and I want to connect with her, what's the best way they can get in touch with you?
The best way to get in touch with me is my website's got all of the resources. It's WLSDelight.com. And if you go there, you'll find I have reports you can download. You can get the link to my YouTube channel, any free events I have coming up. I do free events every quarter. You can get on the notification list if the dates aren't announced yet, or if the dates are announced, you can register for those for free. So WLS Delight.
Shelly, I will absolutely be leaving a link in your show notes, and I definitely kicked around on your website, and you give so many resources for free and so much of your knowledge and mindset, and it's why like you're just great people, and I'm so happy to have you in this summer. So, all right, Busy Bariatrics, I got to tell you, this is exactly why we built summer camp the way we did. Not another crash challenge, not another lose 20 pounds in 14 minutes or even 14 weeks, not fake motivate or toxic positivity. We work on real education, real community, and real behavior change. Because surgery helps your stomach, coaching helps your habits, and community helps your consistency. And mindset? That's the glue that holds it all together. So if this episode hit home for you and you're tired of restarting every Monday like it's your part-time job, this is my cue. You want to get in on summer camp because spots are really down to the wire on these ones. Also, if this episode punched you directly in the emotional pancreas a little bit, good. That means there's work to do. Because long-term success after bariatric surgery isn't built through punishment, guilt, or pretending you'll magically become disciplined one Monday morning after eating one last treat 17 weekends in a row. It's built through awareness, patterns, habits, behaviors, environment, community, and learning how to think differently when life gets hard. Shelly, I want to thank you again for coming on and having such a real conversation today. And if people are still listening, can you do me a favor? Like, leave a 5-star rating and review so this message gets out to more people and they can connect with Shelly as well. Because somebody out there still thinks they're broken when really they just haven't learned the skills yet. And again, if you're ready to stop white knuckling your journey and finally build a lifestyle that lasts, come join us at Busy Bariatrics Summer Camp. And as always, keep getting busy. Thanks again, Shelly.
Thanks, Rob.